Aloha, and thanks for tuning in. You'll notice I'm in a little different environment here. This is just a different part of my basement. Doesn't get much use. I wanted to touch base on some of the projects I've been doing. I know I've mentioned projects a bunch, but I didn't really talk about them. So I want to just throw those out there, and you're going to see some of these. Some will make them into the Cessna 172. Other ones are going to be in a new cockpit that I'm setting up. That's going to be general aviation, slant, commercial, whatever I want it to be. It's going to be very generic. So for the Cessna 172, project number one is an annunciator panel. Now the trick with my annunciator panel here is it had to work on top of a monitor, so it had to be low profile. And it had to cover a hole that I cut in the wood as well. So there's some thin PLA here that's painted to match the wood. Now I've got this all working with the exception of the test. I've gotten indications to work for low fuel, oil pressure, vacuum, and voltage. So this is probably going in the next couple of weeks. I just want to get the test function working. A little bit of a challenge on that. And it's all running off of an Uno. MobiFlight has gotten way better at supporting Unos. And this is the newer Uno that uses USB-C. Big fan of that. And they're super cheap. They're like $7 a piece. So it definitely makes getting into MobiFlight easier that way. The next one here is, I built this a while back and then I've been modifying it as I go, is an updated parking brake. So you can buy parking brakes, third party, that are professionally built, but I've seen them for over $100. This is off of Thingiverse, mostly. I tweaked the design myself. I added a micro switch here, and instead of using the rubber bands like they wanted to use, I just put a spring assembly in, and then close micro switch, open micro switch, close, pull, turn, boom. So this is going to go in very soon. Right now I actually just have a switch, a multi-position switch in there. This will replace that. Adds a lot more realism, and I like it. This next part is one that I'm just testing out now. I've been tweaking and playing with the idea, and it's a second yoke. Now in my Cessna 172, if you've watched the videos, you know I only have the single yoke on the pilot side. I want a yoke on the passenger side, but I don't want the whole assembly. There's some videos out there where people have done dual yokes, but they had to do the drawer sliders on each side. They had to have an assembly that connected the two, so they moved in unison, and then they actually had to add tension and a means of syncing up the two individual yokes. I didn't want to do all that. I love the Honeycomb Alpha yoke. I don't want to get into the Honeycomb craziness that's going on right now, but their yoke is phenomenal. So the way I'm going about it is I'm going to make a fake yoke. I'm going to call it a phantom yoke, and it's going to react to the input from the Alpha electrically. So here I built an assembly. It's 3D printed. I'm going to have a stepper motor on the back and a stepper motor on the side. There's going to be gears down here. The gears are actually printed. I just got to pretty them up. And I just tested the stepper for the back, and it worked perfectly. So what's going to happen is, via MobiFlight, you're just going to have a left and right and a forward and back stepper motor. And as you make changes in deflection on the yoke, it'll interpret those here as well. But this is configured as an output, not an input. So it will actually act like a second yoke. You can't control the sim with it, but it will still work. Now, the next piece I got to build is the actual shaft going to the yoke itself. I'm going to do that with PLA, but I'm going to do a lot of infill. In 3D printing, infill is the density, basically, of your print. Most prints are only like 20-25% infill, even though they feel solid. I'm going to do about 50% infill, so it'll take quite a while to build that main part of that, but it will be very, very resilient that way. It'll be able to handle the weight of a yoke on the end, so it should work pretty well. I think the hardest part was just the proof of concept, making sure the stepper motors would output what you were doing on the yoke itself, and that worked flawlessly. So I think I'm good. I think this is going to work. I'm going to run it off of a just an Arduino Uno that I already have. It's going to be mounted right here, and it's just going to go into my dash assembly, and I think it's going to work well. Now, lastly, and this is going to be the longest part, I think, I mentioned the other cockpit I'm working on. So Frankenpit is getting a total refurb based on the fact I want to fly other things besides my Cessna. So setting up a generic cockpit, I wanted it to be able to be anything I want. But in the past, I had a lot of problems with that. When I say problems, I mean I actually went out and I bought a blank panel that you could mount stuff in. That was roughly $200 just for a blank panel. And I just don't want to do stuff like that again. So I came up with my own idea for a modular setup for anybody. And this modular setup would work if you're a casual flight simmer. It works if you're a hardcore flight simmer. And I want to talk about that real quick. So over here, move these up here. I have two 15.6-inch displays, and I have Knobster. Knobster, if you've never seen Knobster, Knobster's phenomenal. These are touch screens. You touch, Knobster controls where you touch. It's that simple. It works with Air Manager. Phenomenal integration with those guys. The products just work great. On here, there's two touch screens. Now, these are all modules. This section here and this section here are the exact same 3D print. In between them, they're connected with bolts that go through and just connect it to this Knobster section, and you have a fairly solid unit. There's a ledge underneath, so it can either be C-clamped down or you can just drill holes right through it because it's plastic and mount it straight to a desk. So if you're somebody who wanted to fly a 737, you could just get another one of these panels, put it on the end, and now you could have the pilot, the co-pilot, the center panel. Boom. And there's also going to be a glare shield that goes over the top as well. And built into each part of the glare shield is going to be an LED strip. So in the two display configuration, it's great for Cessnas, for Pipers, anything you want to fly. But add another one on, boom. I'm also working on another one that would be an overhead panel. So again, if you're talking a 737 or an Airbus, you could have an overhead panel representation as well. It's just very, very flexible, and it's all screen related. But what if you didn't want to have all that many screens, or you wanted to have just one screen? Well, all you need is one of these and the Knobster, and you've got a cockpit. Done. With two of them, you got a little bit better of a cockpit. Now, what if you wanted like actual hardware in your cockpit? Well, that's where this comes in. This pops over here like yay, and you can just, these are some parts I'm working on right now. This is a switch panel that hasn't been painted yet. It can be mounted. I'm working on a side bracket that just snaps in as well, but that goes there. Another panel or whatever comes under here. You could also put a real sim gear or a flight sim builder gauge in here. You could use this to cover or to mount prop wash sim panels. Any real gauge could physically be here. And then you just take out one of the monitors, or you have the holder with no monitor, put it in place. Your real stuff is popping out the back, and you just hook it up. So I put it here. All my stuff just protrudes out the back with no monitor here. Hook it up to your flight sim, and you go. So I think this is the most modular thing I've seen. I love the idea. And the reason I can do stuff like this is I have a printer that has a huge print bed. So most 3D printers have 8 or 9 inches of printable space, 8 by 8, 9 by 9. Mine, I think, is about 18 by 18. It's a King Max by Anycubic, and it is large. So I can print stuff like this easily. It's not hard to do. The printer itself is 35 inches wide, including the spooling area. But I think it's like 21 inches, 22 inches long, and like 22 inches wide for the main section of the printer with the spool off to the side. But you get a lot of print surface. So that allows me to do big things like this. And you'll notice there's a very sharp edge. Well, here's one of the sides I'm working on. I put a FIP gauge in with a cover. And in here, I'm going to put a Cessna switch panel, or a switch panel inspired by Cessna, I'll say. There's a key. There's the alt or master alternator, battery, avionics, and switches. And I'm using micro switches, but they still look decent. All fits in right there. And up here, I'm going to put the Cessna engine gauges. And I also have a blank one here for the other side. Now I have a cover that just pops on if you don't want to use any gauges, or if you do, you just get something like this and it pops right on. But for me, this is going to be how the Franken pit gets used to fly anything I want to fly. It'll be great for a generic cockpit. Now, this is also something that if anybody's interested in this, let me know. I've never seen something as modular as this. I've never seen something that allows you to just, like Legos, stack what you want, build it into your configuration fairly easily. Everything bolts together fairly easily. It's something that if you're interested, let me know. It wouldn't be super expensive to put together. It wouldn't break the bank. It's all just PLA, so it's not hard to build. It just takes time. Each one of these takes about 12 to 14 hours to print. This middle guy here for the Knobster took about 6.5 hours. Not that hard. It's easily doable. And I'm also working on another section that would house Octavi, because I don't know if anybody's ever played with Octavi out there. Look up, use YouTube, look this guy up. This thing is phenomenal. It's like a mini cockpit in your hand. So I'm working on another version of the center section that will only have Octavi in it. And you can even just Velcro them there, I guess. Look at that. But it gives you a lot of functionality without needing a touchscreen. So between Octavi and Knobster, just so many amazing options to get into flight simulation and to get into, whether it's X-Plane or Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's just fun. But these are the projects I've been working on. It may be a while before you see them thrown into videos. Right now, I do have three different sections of one video that I'm actually trying to edit. So hopefully I'm going to start editing videos, so you don't have to suffer through watching these videos. I know it's painful. Some of my videos are horrible, and I apologize for that. My video editing skills are right up there with my 3D editing skills. They don't exist. So my apologies, and thank you for sticking with me. But if anybody has any, questions, comments, concerns, ask away. If there's any interest in stuff like this, let me know. Just reach out. This is definitely something that I would love to throw together for people. There would be minimal cost because, again, it's just PLA. The biggest cost for me is just time. And to be honest, I can start one of these and leave the house. Not a big deal. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Again, questions, comments, concerns, throw them below. As always, stay safe and happy flying out there.